Welcome to Working Your Way, the podcast dedicated to unraveling the journey of being authentic in the workplace. I'm your host, Sandhya Sudhakar, and in the spirit of authenticity, this wasn't actually the episode that I planned to share with you today. But life happens, and ultimately I made a decision that was best for my guest and their needs. And we all deserve a little grace when things don't go as planned, including my guests and even me. With that, I wanted to take this opportunity to share a little more about how I embrace authenticity in my own career. I ask these questions a lot of my guests, and I do share tiny bits about my own work life along the way. But today I'm sharing with you a live talk that I did for an organization that I've been part of for almost 2 years. In this talk, I highlight the journey of starting my business and how I run the day-to-day in a way that aligns with who I am and what I love. And there has never been a question for me about if I love the work that I do with clients. Frankly, that's the easy part. But how I run a business in order to do that work with my clients is a very different topic. And this has truly been a journey for me of experimenting and failing and succeeding and learning and unlearning. A little bit about this talk. The organization I mentioned is called CreativeMornings, and it's a global community with over 200 chapters across the world, where once a month, creatives of all types gather to have coffee and get inspired together. It's a free, accessible breakfast lecture series that's open to anyone who either works in the creative fields or just wants to tap into their own inner creativity. And hint here, that can be all of us. I had the honor of being the speaker at our July 2023 event. And this isn't my typical polished on-stage presence. This group is very much a community, and so you're going to get a little bit of a stripped-down, informal sharing of my story. And you know what? All of those ways of showing up are authentic to me, whether it's formal and polished or whether it's stripped down and informal. It's still me. Now, each month, there's a different theme that all of the chapters around the globe follow. And the theme for July 2023 was treasure. Each talk is the speaker's interpretation of that theme and kind of what it means to them. So the talk you're about to hear is all about how we can reframe treasure, not as the end state or the outcome, but as the actual journey that we go on. And I share some specific ways that I've built my business in ways that work for me. This talk actually happened when this podcast was just an idea in my head. So that's kind of a cool moment for me to reflect on. I hope you enjoy this glimpse behind the scenes of my work life and career and how I've embraced working my way. Okay, so this is really fun to be here because I am on the CreativeMornings team, and it feels like a very full circle moment for me because my first Creative Mornings event was right here at Guildrow with Tiffany Wong as our speaker, and Guildrow is my home away from home in Chicago. I'm a member here, and it is a fabulous space. So I feel very supported being here with my team, my friends, my second home in Chicago, and thank you for the introduction. Thank you to the whole team who always just seamlessly makes these events come together, including our fearless leader, Jules, our queen, wherever she may be. Okay, so every month I get so much out of these events. I come away being inspired and energized. And so thank you all for being here. And I hope to bring just a fraction of that to you. I'm Sandhya Sudhakar, as Marlene mentioned. I'm the founder of Self at Work. I'm a coach, a facilitator, a speaker, and I use the Enneagram framework and a trauma-informed approach in the work that I do with leaders and teams to create a sense of belonging at work through authenticity and inclusion. And the theme all across the world for Creative Mornings is treasure for July. And we heard so many classic stories about treasure. Usually it's all about, going out in search of this thing. But what really happens in these stories is generally not about the treasure itself. It's about the hero and the seeking and the searching and the encountering obstacles along the way and overcoming them and the evolving that happens with our hero. So at the end of the day, it's really not usually about the treasure. It's about the adventure that we go on along the way. And my adventure started in the 1980s in Columbus, Indiana, a mostly rural town where my dad landed his dream job at Cummins Engine Company, working on diesel truck engines to make them more efficient. And being the daughter of immigrants, it was easy to see what my job was. Get a good education, graduate, go to college, get a secure job, and live out these kind of dreams of my immigrant family. And I've always had this kind of finely tuned radar for understanding what people need, want, and expect from me. And growing up as the daughter of Indian immigrants in Columbus, Indiana, I knew that radar was going to be really important for me. I used that radar to fit in with kids at school. I was a social chameleon. I could get along with the cool kids in their Abercrombie and leather jackets and the farm boys and their belt buckles with their big trucks. And I used that radar to determine how I would make my family proud. So I graduated. I went to one of the top business schools in the country on a full ride scholarship. I graduated with honors. And I went to work at a Fortune 50 company where I climbed the corporate ladder. And over time, these things that I thought were the treasure, the goal, the destination, the outcome, ended up being some of my biggest challenges. The goal was to be the person that people wanted, needed, and expected me to be. The destination that I followed the map to was success and to be valuable and to be accepted. And the outcome of all of that that I thought would be was belonging. I would earn my space in people's hearts, and I would connect with the world through recognition and validation and admiration. And over time, I got more and more away from the things that really mattered to me and who I really was. And in the summer of 2019, I found myself in a job. I had just moved into a new company through an acquisition, and the leadership there can only be described as an old boys club with some slightly shady ethical standards. And over the past year before this happened, I had been working on this new innovation project in the hospitality space that was going to help chefs and operators bring their visions to life in a way that they hadn't been able to do before. So I walk into my first meeting with my 2-up manager, and we're going over marketing budgets, and it goes a little something like this. Pull out a spreadsheet, and I see the red line through the budget for my project. They thought it wasn't going to work. It was not the way that things had always been done. And so slowly, this place chipped away at me, and I became that person who was waking up on Monday mornings, dreading opening up my laptop, and feeling really disconnected from the people that I worked with, work that I was doing. And in my free time, I was scrolling Instagram, screenshotting and saving really validating advice like, stop giving the same people new opportunities to disappoint you.
Oh, yes.
Because my boyfriend at the time
an amazing human who was always doing things for other people, but he was opening a new restaurant, and our relationship just didn't make it on that to-do list. And so from the outside looking in, I'm a VP at a company who makes these beautiful products for chefs all over the world. And my boyfriend's this hot up-and-coming chef here in Chicago. And I had never felt more empty in my life. So what I did next was maybe the first time I could remember of making a decision that was 100% just for me. I quit my job. I left my relationship, and I left, literally. I went on a sabbatical for what was supposed to be 4 months and ended up being 7. And I was no longer making decisions based on other people's expectations.
Yes.
So these goals that I had set, really for the past 30 plus years, I hadn't really thought about why I had those goals. What was it behind the promotion or the relationship or the house or the things that I was acquiring throughout my life? Why did I want those things? And so after I quit my job and left my relationship, I spent 4 months traveling, and I promised myself for the first time in my life I was going to have no goals. I was going to just give myself space and time to be. I would follow the things that energized me and excited me and sparked my curiosity. I would dive deep into learning about things that interested me, and I would really just spend some time reconnecting with what I actually desire. So on one of my trips, first of all, I went to a couple of places, visited some really good friends, kind of like filled that emotional bucket back up. I went to a bunch of different cities, largely based on where in the world I could find the best food, like yes. Oaxaca and Singapore.
Hell yeah.
And one of the trips was to Bali, and I was in this experience with 16 other people where we would stay in the same place together for 2 weeks and explore and think about slow travel. But part of this organization and what they do on their trips is everybody talks about what is the thing that you want to get out of this experience and what do you want to contribute to the group. And I had been on this kind of self-exploration and found, this personality tool called the Enneagram that I had really learned a lot about myself through, and kind of offered it up as I could do a workshop, but I saw people's eyes light up. So I did a workshop, and it wasn't, there was no kind of outcome or end state in doing it. It was just something that I had found to be really interesting in exploring myself, and it had brought me a lot of value and insight, and so I just wanted to share that with other people. So I never really set out to start a business in the first place. It wasn't about that end state, right? It was just about this journey of self-exploration, this journey of decompressing from just being who I thought I needed to be for, the better part of my life. And my very first client was actually the CEO of that travel startup that happened to be at that workshop that I did in Bali. And while they paid me very, very little, it ended up being a really good opportunity for me to experiment and see what I could do or create something new. And so I did it. So fast forward to today, there was a lot of growth, my own growth. There's a lot of learning and experimentation in my business, pivoting, refining. And one of the things that I've held really core to myself and how I have built my business and how I choose to run it is thinking about what is the way that I want to do this. I'm planning on doing this for the rest of my life in some way, shape, or form. And so I'm trying to take my time to build it in a sustainable way and think about what are the things that are really core to who I am and how do I integrate those into the business that I'm building. So kind of 3 core things and ways that I'm doing this is 1, leveraging my talents. And one of the interesting things that happened on that trip to Bali with all these kind of relative strangers was me experiencing having my talents reflected back to me through other people. They were able to see things that I do that I just thought everybody does well, because they're things that came easy to me. And everybody has these things, the things that we just naturally do that we just assume everyone does because we don't put effort into it. And so hearing those things coming back to me and how they impacted other people was super helpful. And so now when I think about what it is that I do, I've had the privilege of kind of exploring this more, both within my master's program that I did after I came back from my 7-month sabbatical. For the record, my last trip of that time that ended up being 7 months was I got back on March 14th of 2020. So talk about high highs and, low lows.
Oh boy.
I had been traveling the world and adventuring and meeting all these people, and then I was alone with myself for the better part of that, at least probably that first month. So lots of time to explore and reflect because I didn't have a job. So through my own self-exploration and some of these tools and things that I've been able to encounter along the way, some of the things that I build my business around are kind of this natural ability, right? The thing that became kind of a problem for me to sense what people want and need and expect from me enables me to create experiences that people can connect with. I can see and understand what people need and design a way for them to get from point A to point B, whether it's in a workshop or a team coaching session that meets their human needs. The second thing is using my curiosity to help me learn and grow. One of the things that I heard back from friends was, when you're in the room, I learn more about myself and I learn more about the other people that are there. And that's not something I tried or efforted into doing, but it was something that I did and that I didn't realize was a talent of mine. And so now I use that with the teams that I work with and the people that I coach. And the last thing is taking ideas and moving them into action. How do I make an idea or a concept really tangible so that people know what to do with it? And it was something I did in my corporate job, but I didn't really recognize it as such in that space. And now thinking about how do I help people learn about themselves and then go do something with that information. So a lot of times in my team Enneagram workshops, gathering people, helping them kind of set this foundation of trust and connecting with each other. And then learning about themselves, learning about each other, and putting their insights into action around their team practices and the way that they do business and the way that they work. And one of the amazing outcomes of this is helping people see the amazingness that they just have naturally, that they can now bring into their work and own and be proud of and claim. So the next one is working my way. And instead of one of the things that I rewrote in this amazing entrepreneur community I'm a part of is, how do I set goals? Because I've always been the person that's able to set a quarterly goal and put some dollars behind that and the activities and the strategies that are leading to the goal. And I did that my first year of entrepreneurship, and then I got to the end of the year and I just laughed at myself because I was like, well, that was cute. You thought that this was going to happen, and that's not at all what happened. So now what I do is really think about, what would that goal get me? What do I want from that goal, and how do I design the goal around that desire, around the thing that I actually want? Do I want to make $100,000 or $200,000 or $1 million? Sure. But what would I go do with that? What's the point? And so I'm going to read this because this is a vision that I set for myself and my business about a year ago. And it's about how I will define success. So I have a business that supports my lifestyle, where I'm able to prioritize my health and well-being, show up generously for my loved ones, travel and eat luxuriously, focus my time and energy on the things I love to do, and pay well to outsource the things I don't. And so who knows what amount of money that would take, but that's where I'm going. And I heard a really good quote, probably by a very bro-y entrepreneur, but it was, as entrepreneurs, we tend to underestimate the amount of things that we can do in a day, or overestimate the amount of things we can do in a day, and underestimate the amount of things we can do in a year. Mm-hmm. And so I could set some goals, but frankly, I'd probably be dreaming too small. So what I do with clients and how I run my business are two different things, right? I can leverage my talents in the way that I am in a room with clients, but also in how I run my business. And what I've done is choose to do activities that actually energize me and stop kind of following a template of someone else's way that they've grown their business. To me, frankly, writing is torturous. I hate it. But I like to talk, right? So speaking and podcasting and things like that have been part of my own journey and the way that I want to get my message out into the world, which brings me to the third point here, which is sharing my story. Selling your work as a creative or a creator is deeply personal and kind of terrifying, right? I know a lot of you in the room probably recognize that feeling. And as somebody who is patterned to care deeply about what people think of me, putting myself out into the world is like a daily facing of my greatest fear of failure and rejection. And so for me, sharing my story allows me to do a couple of things. First is I get to lean into the activities that I enjoy, right? Again, this is like an energy management thing. How can I do the things that I actually like, that energize me, that lead to where I want to go with my business? Two, it helps me build a new muscle around putting myself out there. And both normalizing the positive responses and the negative responses. And I heard another great quote by the artist, well-known George O'Keeffe, and she said something like, I've already decided for myself. And so criticism and flattery go down the same drain, and I am free.
Yes.
And so I'm trying to hold all of these things lightly. The feedback that I get that maybe isn't so great, that feels deeply personal, and the praise that I get as well. And put them all in the same box. But getting myself out there in front of people and seeing the response over and over again, right? And building a new muscle, training myself to be able to do that and to face that potential rejection around every corner, right? Third, the visibility allows the right people to show up in my world. I get to be out in the world and be me. And that'll bring people who like what I have to say or care about what I do to my door. And then, if you can't tell by now, I am a huge fan of self-expression. And so my greatest dream is that I get to run around the world just being me.
Yes.
And it creates a ripple effect that allows other people to do the same. So, in leveraging all these things, I'm really focusing on the process versus the outcome. And what is the process that feels fulfilling? What's the process that feels energizing to me? And I know that, not everybody in this room is in a position to quit their job or even would want to, right? We all have different reasons for doing what we do. And not everyone has the resources to go take a 7-month sabbatical and learn about themselves the whole time, right? Hopefully we're all eating good food along the way. But I just want to leave you with a couple of things to reflect on if those are not things that you're ready to go and do. So first, there's this, phrase like, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And I kind of think it's bullshit. So instead of do what you love, I say find what you love in what you do. Think about the things that fill you up. Think about your values. Think about the ways that you want to be in the world, and find ways to do that in your current job. Things like, building really deep connected relationships, or thinking about new ideas or ways of working, right? If those things light you up, learning new things, find ways to do those in your current work. And then, we can always try to get kind of closer and closer to what that looks like for having the dream job, right? But I don't know if that exists. So second is embrace your authenticity in the how. So We work in organizations. We don't really get to choose what the goals are, the objectives of the work to be done. We have to do it, right? But how do we find the ways to leverage our talents, work, think, communicate in our own way? So when the what is non-negotiable, how do we focus on the how? What's the way that I can get to that what that feels really true to who I am? And I would encourage everybody to explore this. Think about what are the things you naturally do. And a question that I ask often is, when you are in the room, how do people think differently? How do people act differently? And how do people feel differently? Just by being in your presence. Find a lot of insight in the answer to those questions. And then last, I will say, cultivate a sense of belonging from the inside and the outside. So belonging is how we feel when we show up to an environment that welcomes who we are. Inclusion is the outside work, and authenticity is the inside work. And belonging is when we find a good fit. So in inclusion, of course, we want to show up in environments that we feel like we're welcomed and embraced. And I would say that while absolutely toxic workplaces do exist, the majority of companies and leaders want to make sure that you feel good. They want to create an environment at work that people want to come to. It's in their best interests, honestly. And so they don't always know how to do it, though, is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that you can do is articulate what it is that you need. How will they benefit from it? And if you can do that, you can help close that gap between a good leader's intentions and their actions. But oftentimes we're not able to tell people what we need. And so really take the time to explore that and articulate it. And then we each have our own inner work to do. And it's exploring those things that we might do that hold ourselves back. They're often not things that are our fault. They come from our upbringing and trauma and our personalities, and they're deeply rooted. And while they're not our fault, they are our responsibility to understand and find resources that we may have access to try to heal that and move forward from those things. It's about finding the things that we no longer have to carry around. What can we put down? Maybe we couldn't put it down 10 years ago, but maybe we can put it down now. And when we can do that, we can show up more fully, embracing who we are. So think about what you need to cultivate a sense of belonging. It might be leaving a toxic work environment, but it might be working on something that you would just bring to the next company if you left. And kind of repeating those patterns that hold you back from being who you really are. So, authenticity is not a treasure that you seek. It's the adventure you go on. It's a moving target. And for me, what that looks like is continuing to learn and to grow and evolve. And I know that as I evolve as a human, my business is going to evolve with me. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Working Your Way. Make sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. You can also check out all of our episodes, show notes, additional resources, and more at selfatwork.com/podcast.